Life has a way of hurting us in moments we never expect. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a friend who slowly drifts away and leaves you wondering why. Sometimes it is loud, like a betrayal that shakes you so deeply you can feel it in your bones. And sometimes, especially as we grow older, the hurt comes from people we once trusted with our whole hearts, children who forget what we sacrificed, family members who speak with coldness, friends who disappear when we need them most. It leaves a kind of ache that is deeper than anger. It's the ache of being human. And in these moments, people often wonder the same question: how does Jesus handle those who hurt us? And what does he want us to do? Jesus understood hurt more than anyone who ever walked this earth. He lived through betrayal, through lies, through rejection, through disappointment. He faced cruelty from strangers and heartbreak from those closest to him. And yet, he responded with a grace that still seems impossible to many of us today. Older adults around the world, grandparents, parents, seniors who have lived long lives often say the same thing: I've forgiven a lot, but some hurts still sit in my heart. And that is exactly why the teachings of Jesus matter, because Jesus never pretended that hurt didn't hurt. He simply showed us what to do with the pain so that it doesn't take our peace. The story of Jesus is not just a Sunday sermon. It's a story for anyone who has lived long enough to carry scars. Many older viewers say they feel misunderstood, dismissed, or forgotten by people they once supported. They feel the sting of disrespect from the younger generation, the loneliness that comes with aging, and the quiet sorrow of relationships that change too fast. But when Jesus walked this earth, he experienced those same emotions. He knew what it meant to be talked about behind his back. He knew what it meant to have people doubt him, insult him, even hate him without reason. And yet, his heart remained soft. His spirit remained unbroken. His love never dimmed. Because Jesus didn't just tell us how to deal with those who hurt us, he lived it. One of the most powerful moments in Scripture is when Jesus said, "Love your enemies." But he didn't say this from a comfortable mansion or a protected place. He said it after being insulted, challenged, rejected, and plotted against. He said it knowing that more hurt was on the way. He said it while carrying the weight of humanity's failures on his shoulders. And he said it not because loving your enemies is easy, but because loving your enemies is liberating. For older adults who have lived long enough to know the heaviness of grudges, Jesus' message is not about letting people walk all over you. It is about freeing your heart from the weight that others tried to place on you. Because the truth is, holding onto pain can make the heart tired. It can drain your energy, your joy, and your peace. And many older adults know what that feels like. The long nights of thinking about what someone said, the regrets of wishing a conversation had gone differently, the disappointment of broken promises or lost relationships. Jesus saw all of this in the people around him. He saw their hurt. He saw how bitterness was eating away at their joy. And he offered something better, something deeper than revenge, something more healing than payback, something more powerful than resentment. Jesus handles those who hurt you by showing you that hurt doesn't have to define you. He teaches that pain is not the end of the story, and he shows that even when others fail you, God does not. Jesus never asked you to pretend that wrong is right. Instead, he teaches how to confront pain without letting it poison your soul. When those closest to him doubted him, he kept walking. When people mocked him, he stayed focused. When Judas betrayed him with a kiss, one of the deepest acts of emotional pain in history, Jesus looked him in the eye and called him friend, not because Judas deserved it, but because Jesus refused to let someone else's darkness dim his light. Older adults everywhere understand betrayal in a way the young often do not. They have seen people change, promises break, relationships crumble. They have lived through loss, heartbreak, and disappointment. And yet, many also know the quiet peace that comes with forgiveness. Not because the other person apologized, but because they needed peace for themselves. That is exactly how Jesus handles those who hurt you. He teaches you to rise above, not in weakness, but in strength. Because forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is refusing to be controlled by pain. Jesus also shows us that justice and revenge are not the same thing. He never told anyone to ignore wrongdoing. He never said we should silently suffer or stay in harmful situations. What he said is that God sees everything, God hears everything, God remembers everything, and God handles everything in his timing. For many older adults, this truth is comforting, because in their long lives, they have seen time reveal truth. They have watched people reap what they sow. They have seen justice unfold quietly, but powerfully. Jesus teaches that revenge is a temporary satisfaction, but God's justice is permanent and complete. When Jesus was hurt, he turned to prayer not because he needed to be weak, but because prayer is power. Prayer is clarity. Prayer is release. When you pray for someone who hurt you, it isn't always because they deserve your kindness, it's because you deserve your peace. Jesus prayed for those who hurt him because he refused to let their actions change his character, and that is a message older adults understand deeply. Character is who you are when life tests you. Many seniors say it clearly, "I don't have time in my life left for bitterness," and Jesus agrees. Because bitterness is heavy. Anger steals years from your heart, but peace adds years to your soul. Jesus also teaches boundaries, something many people misunderstand. Jesus didn't allow everyone into his inner circle. He didn't chase those who walked away. He didn't force himself on those who rejected him. He let people choose. And this is a powerful message for older adults who feel pressured to stay in painful relationships. Jesus teaches that you can forgive someone and still create distance. You can pray for someone and still protect your peace. You can love someone without allowing them to harm you. Forgiveness and boundaries can exist together. They are not opposites. They are companions. And then there is one of the most moving parts of Jesus' teachings. He reminds us that hurt people often hurt others. Many older adults know this truth. Well, they've seen family members lash out because of stress, fear, insecurity, or emotional wounds from the past. They've seen loved ones project old pain onto the closest people around them. Jesus looked at the people who hurt him and said, "They know not what they do." Not because their actions were acceptable, but because he understood that broken hearts often create broken behaviors. And understanding this truth does not excuse the pain, but it helps the healing. Jesus handles those who hurt you by lifting the burden off your shoulders. He reminds you that the weight is not yours to carry. The universe is not blind. God is not silent. And no act of cruel, unfairness, or disrespect goes unnoticed. Older adults who have lived a full life often say, "I've seen God work things out in ways I never expected." And that is exactly how Jesus works quietly, powerfully, and perfectly in ways that human revenge never could. When Jesus forgives, he doesn't pretend the hurt didn't happen. He acknowledges the pain, the betrayal, the injustice, and then he transforms it. He turns wounds into wisdom. He turns heartbreak into strength. He turns suffering into purpose. Many older adults look back on painful chapters of their lives and say, "I didn't understand it then, but now I see why it happened." Jesus takes the pieces of your hurt and builds something stronger in you, something unshakable. He teaches that your identity is not based on who hurt you, but on who heals you. And he reminds you that even when people fail, God never does. Jesus handles those who hurt you by protecting your peace, guiding your steps, and carrying your pain. He brings justice in the right time, healing in the right season, and clarity when your heart is ready. And most importantly, he shows you that you are never alone in your hurt. He walked through, hurt himself so he could walk beside you in yours. There comes a moment in every person's life, especially as the years add up, when we finally understand that some hurts will not be fixed by apologies, conversations, or explanations. Some people will never see the pain they caused. Some will never say, "I'm sorry." Some may not even realize they left a wound behind. And many older adults understand this reality more than anyone. They've lived long enough to know that life doesn't always hand you closure. Sometimes you simply have to create your own. And this is where Jesus enters the story, not as a distant religious symbol, but as a companion who walks beside you in the quiet. unspoken emotions that others may never see. Jesus understands deeply the pain of being misunderstood, disrespected, or pushed aside because he went through it too. There were people who heard his teachings and twisted his words. There were friends who promised loyalty and then disappeared when trouble came. There were leaders who judged him without knowing him. There were crowds who cheered for him one day and shouted against him the next. Jesus experienced every form of emotional pain that exists: rejection, betrayal, disrespect, disappointment, and even loneliness. And still, he responded with a heart full of wisdom, not anger. And that wisdom is what he gives to anyone today who has ever been hurt by someone they trusted. Jesus never told us to deny our feelings. He never said pain isn't real. Instead, he recognized that pain has a purpose. Pain reveals what matters. Pain shows what needs healing. Pain pushes us toward God when we feel like the world has let us down, especially for older adults who have lived through decades of relationships, some beautiful, some broken. Jesus provides clarity that time alone doesn't always offer. One of the clearest truths Jesus teaches about people who hurt us is this: their actions say more about them than they ever say about you. Many older viewers know how painful it is when someone lashes out unfairly. Maybe it was a child who blamed you for their struggles. Maybe it was a spouse who carried their frustration into your home. Maybe it was a friend who turned distant because of jealousy or insecurity. Maybe it was a neighbor, coworker, or even a church member who spoke unkindly without knowing your heart. And sometimes, the older we become, the more we see how often people project their own pain onto others. Jesus teaches that someone else's hurtful behavior is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their wounds. Jesus also teaches that healing does not come from holding onto bitterness. Bitterness is like a slow poison that spreads quietly. It attacks your joy. It steals your sleep. It makes you replay memories again and again until your heart feels heavy. And older adults know how exhaustion feels: not just physical exhaustion, but emotional exhaustion from carrying around old hurts. Jesus wants you to release that weight, not for the sake of the person who hurt you, but for the sake of the peace he wants to give you. Sometimes, healing begins with understanding Jesus' heart. When he said, "Bless those who curse you," people often misunderstand and think he meant to ignore the pain, but Jesus never denied reality. Instead, he offered a better way to respond. He knew that responding with anger makes the wound deeper. Responding with hatred makes the wound permanent. But responding with compassion, even silent compassion, turns the wound into wisdom instead of a lifelong scar. Older adults often say that over time, they learn that not all battles deserve a response. Not every comment needs to be answered. Not every insult needs to be matched. Not every disrespectful action deserves energy. And Jesus models this perfectly. When people insulted him, he didn't waste his breath trying to convince them of his value. When people lied about him, he didn't chase after them to correct the story. When people misunderstood him, he stayed focused on his purpose instead of becoming angry. Jesus teaches that your peace is more important than proving yourself to people who are determined not to understand you. Another thing Jesus teaches about hurt is the importance of stepping back. There were moments when Jesus walked away from people not out of anger, but out of wisdom. When crowds wanted to stone him, he left the scene. When people tried to twist his teachings, he withdrew. When his hometown rejected him, he moved forward. This is a powerful message for older adults who struggle with letting go of relationships that drain them. Jesus shows that stepping back is not weakness, it is protection. You can love someone from a distance. You can wish someone well without allowing them into your life. You can forgive without staying close. Jesus himself lived this truth. And yet, even while creating boundaries, Jesus kept his heart soft. That is the true miracle. Many older adults say they have been hurt so many times that their hearts feel worn down. Some say, "My heart is tired." Some say, "I don't trust people anymore." Some say, "I'm too old for new friendships because I don't want to get hurt again." Jesus understands that feeling, but he also shows that the strength of your heart is not measured by how much pain you've avoided. It's measured by how much love you still choose to carry. One of the most emotional examples is Peter. Peter was not an enemy. Peter was one of Jesus' closest friends. And yet, in Jesus' darkest moment, Peter denied knowing him not once, but 3 times. That kind of pain cuts deeper than betrayal from a stranger. Many older adults know exactly what it feels like when hurt comes from someone they deeply trusted, a child, a spouse, a longtime friend. Jesus met that pain with forgiveness, not bitterness, not anger, not revenge. He forgave Peter before Peter even apologized. Jesus teaches that forgiveness is not about excusing the hurt. It is about releasing the emotional chain that ties you to the moment of pain. Forgiveness is freedom. And older adults who have practiced forgiveness often say they feel lighter, healthier, more at peace than when they held onto anger. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it changes the hold the past has on you. But Jesus also teaches that forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Reconciliation is a choice between two people, and it is only possible if both sides truly want to change. Many older adults struggle because they feel pressured to pretend everything is fine when it isn't. Jesus never asked you to stay in a harmful relationship. He never asked you to tolerate disrespect. He simply asked you not to let hate take root in your heart. That is the difference. You can forgive and walk away. You can forgive and redefine the relationship. You can forgive and create distance. This is how Jesus handles those who hurt you. He frees your heart without forcing you back into pain. Then there is the story of Judas the betrayal that still echoes through history. Judas sold Jesus out for money. He abandoned loyalty for selfish gain. And yet, Jesus did not punish him. Jesus didn't chase him. Jesus didn't argue with him. Jesus didn't humiliate him. Jesus allowed Judas to walk away. And that is a profound lesson for older adults who feel the ache of being replaced, ignored, or used. Jesus shows that walking away is sometimes the only choice people know how to make. It doesn't excuse the hurt, but it explains the brokenness behind it. One of the quietest but most powerful ways Jesus handles those who hurt you is by protecting your destiny. Jesus never allowed the intentions of others to stop the purpose God had for him. People tried to set traps, but Jesus walked around them. People tried to humiliate him, but God lifted him higher. People tried to silence him, but his message only grew louder. That is how God works in your life too. Those who tried to harm you may have slowed you down, but they did not destroy what God built inside you. Your purpose does not depend on their approval. Your life story does not end with their betrayal. Jesus shows that no one, not even your greatest enemy, has the power to cancel what God has planned for you. Another emotional truth Jesus teaches is that silence can be more powerful than anger. When he stood before his accusers, he didn't shout. He didn't argue. He didn't throw their words back at them. Sometimes older adults say, "I don't waste my energy arguing anymore." That is not giving up, that is growth. Jesus shows that silence is not weakness. Silence is wisdom. Silence protects your peace. Silence lets God speak. And silence removes you from battles that are beneath your purpose. Then there is the compassionate side of Jesus, the side that comforts anyone who has ever cried quietly in their room or wondered why someone treated them unfairly. Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Older adults often carry emotional burdens silently. They don't want to trouble their families. They don't want to appear weak. They don't want to reopen old wounds. But Jesus sees the load on your shoulders even when no one else does. He sees the memories that still hurt. He sees the people you miss. He sees the loved ones who disappointed you. And he says, "Give that pain to me. You were never meant to carry it alone." Jesus handles those who hurt you by healing you, not by changing them. Many older adults hope for reconciliation, hope for apologies, hope for understanding. But Jesus works differently. He strengthens your heart so that even if the other person never changes, you can still live in peace. That is the miracle. Healing doesn't always come from the person who hurt you. Sometimes healing comes from God alone. And as the years pass, Jesus teaches one final truth. Your peace is too precious to give away. Peace is the treasure of a lifetime. Peace is worth protecting. Peace is worth fighting for. Peace is worth walking away from some people for. Peace is worth letting go of old arguments. Older adults who have lived through decades of love, loss, joy, and heartbreak understand this truth better than anyone. Jesus does not just offer peace, he teaches you how to keep it. There is a moment in every person's journey, especially as the years stretch long behind us, when we finally understand that God doesn't always move quickly, but he always moves faithfully. Many older adults have learned this truth through decades of experience. They have lived long enough to watch doors open that were once shut, relationships heal that once felt impossible, and justice unfold in ways that only time and God could orchestrate. And this understanding becomes especially powerful when we think about the hurt others have caused us. Because while human beings fail, disappoint, betray, forget, and sometimes even abandon us, God does none of these things. Jesus shows that the story is never over just because someone hurt you. One of the most reassuring truths Jesus teaches is that God is not rushed by human actions. People can try to ruin your peace, but they cannot ruin your purpose. They can try to break your spirit, but they cannot stop your blessing. They can try to wound your heart, but they cannot destroy the destiny God wrote for you before you were even born. Older adults who have walked through hardship understand this deeply. Many say, "Life didn't go the way I expected, but God always made sure I had what I needed." And that truth becomes a foundation as we explore how Jesus truly handles those who hurt you. Jesus handles those who hurt you by lifting you above the situation, not dragging you into the emotional mud with them. There is a kind of quiet dignity Jesus carried wherever he went. He never let his circumstances dictate his character. He never allowed someone else's behavior to shape his own. This is something many older viewers relate to. After decades of dealing with different kinds of people, many reach a point where they think, "I refuse to let anyone steal my peace anymore." Jesus lived with that same resolve. When he was insulted, he stayed calm. When he was mocked, he stayed focused. When he was betrayed, he stayed faithful to his purpose. And when he was hurting, he turned to prayer, not bitterness. But Jesus also understood that hurt can turn the heart cold if we don't guard it. He knew that humans have a tendency to build emotional walls, not to keep people out, but to keep pain out. Many seniors understand this better than anyone. They've lived through heartbreak, family conflict, broken friendships, abandonment, disappointments. Some grew up in environments where love had conditions. Some experienced marriages that fell apart after decades. Some carry the weight of words they heard when they were young that still echo in their minds. Jesus sees this, not with judgment, but with compassion. He knows how heavy it is to carry emotional scars, and he gently invites people to lay them at his feet. One of the most profound lessons Jesus teaches about dealing with hurt is this: you are responsible for your heart, not their behavior. Jesus did not allow the actions of others to determine how he responded. He chose grace not because they deserved it, but because he valued his inner peace. When Jesus tells us to forgive, he isn't saying the hurt wasn't real. He isn't saying the pain didn't matter. He is saying, your heart deserves better than holding on to bitterness. Many older adults say that forgiveness helped them sleep better, breathe easier, and find peace they had been searching for all their lives. Jesus teaches forgiveness not as an act of weakness, but as an act of emotional liberation. Another truth Jesus teaches is that God has a way of restoring everything you lost, sometimes in different forms, sometimes in unexpected ways, sometimes in the quiet seasons of life. Older adults often say, "God gave me more peace in my later years than I ever had when I was young." That is not an accident. That is restoration. Jesus knows that hurt steals joy, steals hope, steals years from the heart. But he also knows that God is a restorer, and restoration doesn't depend on the apology you never received. Restoration depends on the healing God brings directly into your spirit. There are moments in Scripture where Jesus comforts people who were deeply broken by the actions of others. The woman at the well, for example, faced judgment, gossip, and rejection. She lived a life of emotional wounds. But Jesus did not condemn her, he restored her. The woman caught in adultery faced humiliation, shame, and danger at the hands of others. Jesus did not shame her, he protected her. Zacchaeus, a man despised by society, lived with regret and emptiness. Jesus did not hold his past against him, he gave him a new beginning. In every case, Jesus handled hurtful situations with grace that healed instead of harmed. And that is exactly what he does today. He meets you where the wound is deepest, and he brings healing where others brought pain. But healing doesn't mean pretending everything is okay. Healing means acknowledging the pain with honesty and then allowing God to transform it. Older adults often carry hurts from decades ago, family members who said harsh words, friendships that ended abruptly, people who took advantage of their kindness. Sometimes these hurts go so far back that they become part of the emotional landscape. Jesus knows this. He doesn't rush healing. He doesn't push you to move on. Instead, he walks with you through the process, one emotional layer at a time. Jesus also teaches that the people who hurt you do not get the final say in your life. God does. You are not defined by the one who broke you, but by the one who heals you. Jesus saw potential in people beyond their mistakes. He saw hope in people beyond their pain. He saw value in people beyond their wounds. And he sees the same in you. Many older adults reach a point in life where they think their story is nearing its end. But Jesus whispers, "There is still more I can write. Your story is not over because of what they did." Another powerful truth Jesus teaches is that not every relationship is meant to stay forever. Some people come into your life to teach lessons. Some come to strengthen you, some come to test you, and some come only for a season. Jesus did not chase after people who left. He did not beg Judas to stay. He did not force the rich, young ruler to follow him. And this is a message many older adults need to hear. It is okay to release people who have shown they do not value your heart. It is okay to let go. God replaces hurt with healing. God replaces loss with peace. God replaces emptiness with purpose. Jesus also shows that love does not mean tolerating mistreatment. He set boundaries. He confronted wrongdoing when necessary. He walked away from toxic situations. He showed us that strength is not measured by how much pain you endure, but by how much wisdom you exercise. Many seniors have learned this the hard way. They stayed quiet to keep peace, only to realize that silence sometimes allows disrespect to grow. Jesus teaches balance. Forgive, but be wise. Love, but protect your peace. Be kind, but do not be a doormat. And perhaps one of the most comforting truths of all is this: God sees what others do not. God sees every tear you cried over someone who didn't value you. God sees every sacrifice you made that no one appreciated. God sees every unkind word spoken about you behind your back. God sees every time you held back anger for the sake of peace. And Jesus teaches that God keeps a perfect record, not to punish, but to restore, heal, and honor your heart. Older adults often say there were seasons in life when they felt unseen or unappreciated. But Jesus promises that nothing is invisible to God. Your kindness is seen. Your patience is seen. Your endurance is seen. Your silent prayers are seen. Your broken heart is seen. And God rewards what people overlook. Jesus handles those who hurt you by protecting your heart, even when you don't realize it. There were moments in your life when God removed someone not because they were good for you, but because He knew they would destroy you. There were opportunities you didn't get because God was saving you from stress you weren't meant to carry. There were relationships that didn't work out because God had better peace waiting for you. Jesus sees what is ahead, even when you don't. He also promises justice, not the angry, impulsive justice of human emotion, but the perfect justice of divine timing. Sometimes God brings justice by revealing truth, sometimes by changing hearts, sometimes by removing harmful people from your life, and sometimes the justice is the peace. He gives you the peace that others will never understand. And then there is the promise that Jesus makes to anyone who has been wounded by others: I will give you rest. This rest is not just physical, it is emotional rest, spiritual rest, Rest from carrying resentment. Rest from replaying old conversations. Rest from trying to understand why someone acted the way they did. Rest from trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. Rest from trying to please people who can't be pleased. Older adults often say that their greatest desire is peace in their homes, peace in their minds, peace in their hearts. And Jesus says, I am your peace. Not people, not apologies, not revenge. Him. So how does Jesus handle those who hurt you? He handles them by handling you. He protects your heart. He restores your peace. He strengthens your spirit. He gives you wisdom. He removes harmful people. He brings the right ones. He heals what others broke. He lifts you above the hurt. He writes a new chapter for your life. And He walks with you so you never have to carry the pain alone. Your story does not end with hurt. Your story ends with healing. It ends with peace. It ends with God's love covering every place where people failed you. Because in the end, Jesus' message is simple. They may have hurt you, but they cannot stop what I am doing in your life.